Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay, and welcome back to the show. Matt from North Pole Radio, Two Broke Geeks, and a featured guest on a lot of other podcasts.
Well, hello. It's always good to be back. I'm glad you asked me to be here because this is going to be a fun one.
I brought you in as the Stephen King ringer because we're here to talk about Dreamcatcher. Why not talk about a winter movie in the middle of the hottest summer of our lives? There's nothing more Film Strip than that.
Need something to keep my mind off the humidity.
Well, this will definitely do that. And it stars Morgan Freeman, Thomas Jane, Damian Lewis, Timothy Olyphant, Jason Lee, Tom Sizemore, and Donnie Wahlberg. Based on the 2001 novel by Stephen King, adapted by Lawrence Kasdan and William Goldman. Yes, the man that wrote Butch Cassidy, The Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, a lot of other great movies, won Academy Awards. Kasdan from Raiders,
Empire
and Star
Strikes
Wars,
Back,
Big Chill, and 1,000 other things you like, directed by Kasdan. You think with a lineup like that, this thing was a huge hit? No. I mean, it technically made $75 million on a $68 million budget, but 33 of that was domestically.
Yeah, and that's not a huge hit. That's barely making your budget back.
That ain't even making it back because,
that's true.
So yeah, they lost it, and we're going to talk about why maybe this one missed the mark. Because Matt, I did see it when it released. We'll talk about that.
I did not.
Yeah. So what's your background with the source material in this movie?
I can't remember. I put Dreamcatcher off for a long time because it was infamously bad. It was Stephen King's first novel after being run over by a fucking van. He was very afraid to write it. He was very afraid to write anything because he was afraid that he wasn't going to be able to. And very, very famously, he wrote this novel longhand, laying on his couch because he couldn't sit at his computer. He was in too much pain to sit at his computer, and he was afraid of his painkillers at the time because he's an addict. He was in a very, very bad spot in his life, but he knew that he had to get back to writing something. And so he had this idea, and it came out, and it was a bestseller because it was his first book after everybody was certain he was not going to live anymore. But it came out, and it's bad, and he knows it's bad. Everybody knows it's bad, but it got him back on the writing horse. So I put it off for quite a while, and the first time I listened to it was only, I don't know, maybe a decade ago. And I was like, yeah, this is not good. And you can tell a lot of the stuff that was on his mind at the time, having barely cheated death. The shit weasels are King saying, a lot of bad things in life you discover in the bathroom. You find blood in the toilet, you find skin cancer in the mirror, and after you take a shower, so that was on his mind. Death obviously was very much on his mind. And so yeah, this is quite enough, and it's huge. I cannot believe he wrote it longhand. It's a bullet stopper of a book.
No, it really is. And I remember that story. Longtime Film Strip listeners will probably have heard, me talk about the accident I had when I was a kid. Not run over by a van and all that, but I did get hit riding my bike and stuff. And so when I heard about that happening to King, I thought, oh my, is he going to make it or whatever? And he did, obviously. And then I heard, hey, he's writing this book, that's partially inspired by that. And I guess just curiosity got the best of me. And I said, yeah, sure. You know what? And I picked it up at the local, Books A Million or whatever. And I remember blowing through it and donating it very quickly to a library or something afterward because I didn't know much about, how he wrote it and all that until years later. But I thought, yeah, this reads like the tortured memoirs of somebody getting over a traumatic experience. because it was so disjointed. You had the
Yep.
obviously the Jonesy character who's him. He always has himself in these stories and gets over this traumatic
Hmm.
experience, but he's going back to, some of his of stuff, which is, friends locked together by, supernatural circumstances. But then he's got like all this treatise on like military
Yep.
industrial complex, and he's also got this whole bit about alien invasions going on. And he's even, I mean, he's got dairy in there. There's references to it in the book that thankfully they leave out of the movie and stuff, but I
Yep.
remember like picking up on that, reading it and going like, oh, that's kind of a weird callback, but okay. And just thinking to myself, I'm like, I get why you had to get this out. As somebody who's written a lot of songs and things in my life, sometimes you just got to get it out of your head, or you're never going to let it go,
Hmm.
And even the bad ideas
Yeah.
you need to
Yeah.
do. And some of them turn into
Yeah.
something, and some of them do not. And so, I thought, well. Yeah, not my favorite. It's not the worst thing I've ever read, but it wasn't great. Like I said, I donated, forgot about it. And then I saw they were doing the movie of this, and I thought, okay, that, you know what, maybe, somebody can do that. And then I saw who was involved with it. And I thought, oh man,
Hmm.
yeah, if there's going to be a people that can find the story in the middle of this and make it cool, it'll be Lawrence Kasdan and William Goldman and then all these actors. And I thought it's going to wind up being like The Shining. King will hate it, but it'll be awesome. And then I went and saw it in the
Yeah.
theaters, Matt, and it was eight kinds of not awesome. And I've seen it a couple of times randomly since, like it would be on cable or something back when we had cable, before we have it again, which is coming. But when that
Yeah, I
would
know.
come up, I would see it. And I remember when I approached you about doing this and wanting to do this one. I put it on, and my wife watched it with me, and she said, "Have I seen this?" I said, "I think you saw it with me." And I don't know, 15, 20 minutes into it, she's like, "No, I'm certain I've never seen this." I was like, it's easy to forget. It kind of self-erases, but and different
Hmm.
times in there, she'd go, "What is this even about anymore?" And I said, "I don't know." You
That's a
know?
good point. Like it's hard to say what this movie is even
It's,
about and what this
I mean,
story is even about. Like
there's a
it's
straight line to it, but to tell you how it all comes together is another problem. And that there is the problem with the movie. And look, I'm sure everyone who worked on this really wanted it to be something. Kasdan and Goldman's careers,
Mhm.
well, Kasdan's recovered, but Goldman's never did, before he
No.
died. But now at that point he had a career. He didn't really need to do
Yeah.
anything else. But like he doesn't need to work, but I'm sure he wanted to. But Kasdan talked about it was a good 10, 12 years before anybody gave him anything else to do. And he ended up
Mm.
doing like a rom-com, one of those boomer rom-coms with Diane Keaton or something.
And
And
that's
and then
crazy
yeah,
unfortunate considering you
yeah,
look at what Kasdan's career was before Dreamcatcher. Like,
yeah.
not everybody's gonna do fucking Stephen King hasn't done everything perfect his entire career and he just keeps
It,
going and Kasdan makes Dreamcatcher and everybody goes, oh, never mind.
Yeah,
It's
they
like,
re-
what are
they
you
really
talking
yeah,
about?
he was supposed to do this thing with Tom Hanks. That didn't happen anymore. He was supposed to get another gig. That didn't happen, and then nothing happened. He just didn't get callbacks anymore. He did what Goldman did a lot of, is do punch-up work on
Yeah.
people's stuff. And then, he did, like I said, he did the kind of the boomer rom-com, and then Star Wars came back to him. And
Yep.
so and he did stuff with his kids. But yeah, I mean, it derailed his career. Now, it didn't necessarily derail any of the actors' careers, which is nice to say.
Yeah.
This is, I think, before most of the world knew Damian Lewis. This is
Hmm.
before Homeland and all the things that, Billions and all the things that he's kind of famous for now.
Right, but
Um,
everybody else in it was a name by
yeah,
that
they
Jason
were.
Lee,
Jason Lee was
Tom
coming.
Jane.
Yeah, Jason Lee was coming out of the Askew-universe, of
Yeah,
and being taken more seriously. Sizemore
was
was
that
pretty young at this point, so.
that was
Mhm.
2001 wasn't even quite the time of he was coming out of the Askew universe, but I think he really hit when My Name is
Is
Earl
Earl.
was a hit on
That
TV.
that is
So,
what really made him mainstream, because when
mhm.
My Name is Earl happened, for years they wanted him to do, that was in the mid 2000s. He was going to do a reboot of Fletch for
Mm.
years with Kevin Smith, and it never happened. That ultimately they ended up turning one of the other Fletch novels into a John Hamm adaptation,
Yep, I
which is actually pretty
remember.
good. It's pretty fun, but he was going to do that forever. But again was coming out of Kevin Smith land. Timothy Olyphant was had been the bad guy in a Scream movie, and
That's true.
had been in
Yep.
a bunch of other stuff, but he wasn't what he's known for now. I think Deadwood hadn't happened, and
No, no, not
um,
yet. No.
yeah, and and then of course he would do um, Justified and a lot of other things. He's just a really good actor, but he hadn't really broken mainstream. Tom Sizemore was pretty relatively young at that point too. Hadn't He had done some things, but he um, he wasn't doing bigger stuff. He had been in Heat and
Hmm.
Saving Private Ryan and stuff, but he was kind of on a swing. And then Donnie Wahlberg would just show up in these weird parts. This
Yeah.
Sixth Sense and stuff before he found a land on CBS television playing cops.
Right.
He was doing this kind of wild stuff. And then Thomas
Ooh.
Jane was, the guy from Deep Blue Sea, before and the
Yeah.
Punisher. So that
Yeah.
was it.
And
And Morgan Freeman.
that's true. Tom Jane hadn't even become, I mean, now he's a little bit of a Stephen King adaptation staple. He's
Yeah,
done Dreamcatcher,
The
he's done
Mist.
The Mist, he's done 1922.
Yeah, he's been in a
He's
lot of them, but
Yep.
again, but you had people attached to this in every realm that this should work, and it
Yep.
didn't. And I guess
No.
I guess let's do the plot summary, then we can get into maybe why it didn't, because you and I are in agreement that this does not work. So
No.
the popcorn ratings will be a surprise to no one at the end of this. But let me get into this. So. As is the want with a lot of things with Stephen King, four lifelong friends, Jonesy, Beaver, Pete, and Henry, head to a remote cabin in Maine, because where else,
Yeah.
for their annual hunting and hanging out trip. They share a psychic connection thanks to their mysterious childhood friend, Duddits, a sweet kid with developmental disabilities whom they rescued from bullies. And as a token of gratitude, he shared his special abilities with these friends who now can communicate, remain connected, and even find their way out of lost places without the traditional ways of doing those things. However, each of them deals with a crippling loneliness and a lack of belonging, except for when the four of them are together. And when a lost hunter stumbles into the cabin looking like he just hit up an all-you-can-eat buffet, Jonesy and Beaver spring to the rescue while Pete and Henry are away getting supplies. The visitor isn't alone, though, and soon gives birth through his rear to a vicious alien weasel monster thing with a set of razor teeth and a bad attitude. So it turns out that Earth is being invaded by these alien calamari, and it's been invaded a lot to reproduce their species, and they need a lot of supply of water to do it. And while they've tried a lot, usually the environment gets in the way, or the military. And in this case, the military is represented by Colonel Abraham Curtis, played by Morgan Freeman, and a hilarious set of eyebrows. Now, Curtis and his right-hand guy, Lieutenant Underhill, played by Sizemore, lead a group of attack helicopter flying military personnel charged with eradicating alien species no matter the cost. So think X-Files meets like a really violent A-team. Along the way, Beaver is killed by one of the monsters. Jonesy's infected by Mr. Gray, who's the alien leader, and goes on the run while Pete and Henry encounter their own misadventures. Pete's eventually killed by Mr. Gray when he's no longer proves useful for directions, and Henry runs afoul of the military brass before finally convincing Underhill that Curtis is just as dangerous as the aliens. Then there's a lot more that goes on that we'll get into, but the climax happens when the infected Jonesy reaches a water supply ready to dump a bunch of alien weasels into it and start the takeover. Henry shows up with Duddits, who appears to be dying of leukemia, but as we find out, he's just borrowing the human body. He's been waiting for a shot at Mr. Gray, Rocky 2 style. So the two you'll go at each other like Alien versus Predator, but not nearly as cool. And I can't believe I'm saying that until Duddits disintegrates them both while Jonesy kills the last of the alien spawn, and he and Henry reunite and credits roll, and we're all left wondering, what the hell did I just watch?
Yeah.
So I think that's the place to start is the what did I just watch? I mean, we talked about it a little bit in the opening, Matt. I don't think this movie or this story knows what it wants to be. It's like Stand By Me with Independence Day and Tapeworms. This is a
And
lot of
it's
whiplash.
it's it's a lot. It's
Hmm.
it. It's
Hmm.
the X-Files. It's
Yeah.
Stand By Me. It's maybe it's a little bit of body horror.
Hmm.
It's a lot of different things. And
Hmm.
again, I think one of the things I always say about King is he could benefit from an editor that was not uh, a lot of times he could benefit from an editor that is not enamored with the fact that he's editing for Stephen
Or that
King,
he's
which I
Stephen
think,
King. Yeah. So
yeah, I think that his editor sometimes has a tendency to not tell him no.
And I
And
think,
especially, I think this book, somebody
Mhm.
was like, oh, thank God he's still going to keep writing books. Let's just, whatever this is, let's just put it out.
I mean, yeah,
And
it really reads like, and the story still feels like, gosh, this could
Mhm.
use another polish, which really gets me because,
Which is, yeah.
again, you've got two Hollywood royalty adapters
Hmm.
here. Now,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know what the deal was with King and the adaptations. Usually, he's not like some overlord about his stuff once it gets sold off.
he's not super
Yeah,
hands-on, but I don't know if he did then, but he definitely has
yeah,
a first look deal now where he gets
yeah,
to see it before anybody else and say what he thinks.
yeah.
But you're right. You're right. It's almost like because this was I think there is I think there's a there
Hmm.
that Kasdan and Goldman could have polished better and really honed into something rather than trying to keep everything.
I'll
So,
put my cards on the table right now. The thing that you didn't need, and you didn't need stars to do it, you could have left them completely in the periphery, is the military angle of
hmm.
this. And it almost feels like, from memories of the book too, that seems like such a wild turn when they go to the military stuff because there's more
Yeah.
characters. Like there's two guys that you see Morgan Freeman like shoot one of them in the
Hmm.
hand for loyalty. Those guys play a much bigger role in all of
Yeah, I
this and
believe
stuff.
so. It's been a while since
Yeah,
I
and I get why you would cut those down because you don't need, again, there's a
Right.
thousand characters in a book and you really only need seven.
Yeah.
So that was the right choice. But in my head, I'm like, you know what? He probably wouldn't have done it as just a side bit. So maybe the deal was you get Morgan Freeman, you got to write you got to have this part for him or whatever. And
Hmm.
he is hamming it up so bad in this too, which I'll never blame that man for anything because he didn't really hit until he was much older. He
No,
struggled for
no.
years. So look, get your checks and do your thing, brother. But this is that part of the story isn't important to what is happening. Like everything that they do could be happening and you didn't need to know who any of them were. The story is these four guys and Duddits in some
Yeah,
ways.
in the
Yeah.
military in a lot of ways is the exposition machine so that
Hmm.
you understand what is happening. Because if you just saw it from the point of our group of friends,
Hmm.
you would be like, there's an alien invasion happening here, percent understand it.
Hmm.
But there's still a way to have the military be the exposition machine without having them be like so much involved. And I
Yeah.
think there's more maybe horror involved, spending
Mhm.
more time with the people that don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is that the story here is these four guys and this bond that they have. And I mean they are archetypes on steroids. You've got the
Hmm.
sensitive intellectual, which is Jonesy, which Damian Lewis really gives a heck of a performance in this.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because he's got to be two people. He gets infected by Mr. Gray and they let him use his natural accent, which is great.
Hmm.
And because he's
He's British.
European, yeah, he's
Yep.
British. I was gonna say I couldn't remember if he was Scottish or British. He's British, and so he gets to do that, and then he does his faux Midwestern that
Hmm.
everybody does when they're British and trying to be American. Then you got Thomas Jane, who's the troubled one, but is
Yeah.
successful. He's this doctor who's always kind of thinking about killing himself. He accidentally shoots his wall once.
Yeah, we meet him about to commit
Mm,
suicide, so
yeah, yeah. You have the reckless alpha, which is um,
Jason Lee,
yeah, well, yeah,
Beaver.
yeah, Beaver, who's like the guy that goes by the beat of his own drum. You don't know how he survives, but he does. He gets it by,
Hmm.
and then you get the other one who just wants to be normal and connect with
Yep.
somebody else. But Timothy Olyphant is so good at playing like this geek fish out of water.
And
He's a
he's
salesman,
so
you know?
weird and awkward in that
Yeah.
moment when you meet his character because
Hmm.
I'm thinking to myself watching it going, you can do this thing, you can do this thing,
Hmm.
but you obviously also want to impress this woman, but you're going about this all wrong. Just
Yeah.
help her find her keys without being weird about it. You're
Have
being
you ever
strange about
seen that
it.
one friend that you knew was like a really good person, but they just could never be all of that at one time in front of another human being? They were just
Uh-huh.
awkward, painfully
Yep.
awkward. And that's the thing
Yep.
about these four guys is that when they are together, the prestige drama that they're doing is really good.
Hmm.
They obviously had some good chemistry together. Their story's
Yeah.
fun with the extended flashback we get of them as teenagers. It does feel very Stand By Me, very It.
Yeah, yeah.
These guys, and you realize that these kids are just they're just kids, at this point or whatever. They're preteen, teenage boys, I guess at this point.
Hmm.
But the older boys are picking on this developmentally disabled kid, and they're not gonna have it. And the one that really stands up is Beaver, is the first one that says something. It's like, no, we're not gonna do this, and
Yeah,
and
he's the one that picks up the rocks and is like,
yeah,
I'm
he's
gonna
ready to
beat you.
go. Yeah, he's ready to throw
Yep.
down, that's again, I feel like King is just going back to things that he knows how to tell. And he's told,
Hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with recycling stories. I mean, goodness gracious, again,
No,
going back to songs, people recycle style all the
and it
time.
can't be stated enough that
Mhm.
like especially this one, he's like not he's just worried that he's gonna be able to write a novel at
Right.
all.
Can
So
even finish a
reaching for
thought.
what he know, yeah, he's reaching for what he knows is probably what got him through.
The problem is with these guys is as we meet them and we see them together, they feel more like a collection of traits than they are real friends. And I feel like if they had not
Hmm.
had to also deal with this military thing where they're spending a good chunk of time to set that up and tell you all of this stuff,
Yeah.
you could have told a great story here. And I'm with you. I think you can have the military do some exposition dump because at one point Henry's going to run into him. So there's your
Hmm.
scene with that where he gets all of this. But it's way more interesting. And truthfully, it's more terrifying from the point of view of people like us that you're on the ground. You don't know what's
Hmm.
happening. You're having to react to it and figure it out.
Yeah.
And they play, they do the physical comedy with the guy and the weasel and all that stuff. It's when, like, again, you're watching this happen, and the other thing is that the way they set it up is that Jonesy's accident, which is obviously analog to King's,
Hmm.
he thinks he sees Duddits again,
Yeah.
waving to him. And I wanted to ask you, like, is Duddits calling out to him telepathically to let him know, like, there's danger coming, you need to be aware of it, or what's happening there, you
Well,
think?
doesn't he say at one point that Duddits is like asking for help? I
Hmm.
think yeah, I think that that's obviously because it's only 6 months later. I think Duddits because we find out number one before we go much further,
Yeah.
Duddits is an unfortunate
Oh,
character.
it's bad.
I
It's bad.
It's bad, bad, bad. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
saying that people with developmental disabilities shouldn't be portrayed in books or on screen or anything like that. They obviously should, but
When you make when your excuse is, well, this is an easy way for an alien to hide among us. Well, you're even more othering
well, it's
individuals
yeah,
who
it's
are other.
essentially an updated version of the magical Negro trope, which King
Yeah,
fell into in his earlier career.
yeah. The
Um,
magical slow kid,
yeah, the
is what this
magical
is.
slow kid is what this
Yeah,
is, and so, but
and it
yes, I
and
think, yeah.
topped off by Donnie Wahlberg's performance. It's horrible. Like, even
Oh
if you
yeah.
were to just accept it, it's still terrible. This
Yep.
man-child person that he's playing, which
Yeah.
is like the sweeter version of the violent character he plays in the few minutes he's in The Sixth Sense. It's very similar. If
Mm-hmm.
you the
Very
way they
true.
do his
Yeah.
hair and all the stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's so bad. And I'm not even saying Matt, even in 2003, I'm going like, can we do this? This is awful. This
Yeah.
feels bad.
It's yeah, it feels really awful. It's
Reading it on the page, I guess it didn't hit me. Like, his speech patterns and things are obviously in the dialogue, but I
hmm
didn't, it just it didn't arrest me the way that seeing it and going like, you guys really thought that was gonna work? Like,
hmm
and not only just from an offensive side, but like just even as a character, doesn't really make any sense. Like, I mean, again, I'm having to help the movie out a lot with the idea of, like,
hmm
well, that'd be an easy way for an alien to hide, and you don't
Yeah, well, and
know.
the
You know?
character is and again, you said it, they're a set of traits, which again for King is very unusual. He's very good at
Yeah,
developing characters, and all of these are traits. And Duddit's trait, we don't even know why he's an alien. We never get any explanation. We just know that he is this person with developmental disabilities that has an ability because he's actually secretly an alien, and even
So
his mom doesn't know he's an
so
alien?
I'm going to tell you how this time it revealed to me how this happened. All right.
Okay.
This so in some of Jonesy going back and forth with Mr. Gray when Damian Lewis is like, and it's actually pretty good camera work. They go left and right,
Yep,
when his
yep.
brains are
I
talking to
did
each
catch
other.
that. That was
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
actually good when he's explaining that, like, oh, we like it here, we're going to take over or whatever, but something always gets in the way. But you know what I realized is I can be in your mind and not destroy you at the same time, because inhabiting people, y'all don't last long with us, which is like that's a trope through all of alien invasion stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, even go to
Mm-hmm.
something like super cheesy in 90s like The Faculty. The
Yeah.
problem was they had to constantly stay hydrated, right? Like it's
Yep.
there's always a
I love
problem
The
with the
Faculty, though. It's
with the
cheesy, but
it is
I do
total
love it.
cheese, but it is a time capsule, that is for sure. But there's always a problem with it, and I kind of like that.
Uh-huh.
And but you hear Gray talking about it, and this is definitely in the book more, but they do talk about it in the movie that, like, we've been here a lot of times. We just haven't been able to successfully do it. But this time I've got a way through. You are my, typhoid Mary. You're my way
Mm-hmm.
to infect with everybody without them getting freaked out about it on the front end too much.
Yeah.
Because at that point too, the military has wiped out the crash site.
Yep.
Which is a kind of a wild scene where the aliens are going like, "Don't hurt us, don't harm us," and it's all bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're Curtis and his band of merry assassins, as it were, from the military. With it was like Firebirds too, with,
Yep.
with Nick Cage is all they were missing. Wipe all that. He's telling him that, like, this is going to be our way through. And the way it revealed to me was like, okay, how did he get into Jonesy? Well, he infected him with that red dust because he
Mm-hmm.
realized that whether it was because of the gifts given to him by Duddits, or maybe they got hyperactivated when he got hurt and he's in healing process and stuff, that he can be infected. I think the Duddits alien came down
Mm-hmm.
chasing Mr. Gray back in the 60s or whatever
Mm-hmm.
when these guys were kids as I've got to stop him. And he figured out I can infect this developmentally disabled kid and nobody will know the wiser. Nobody's gonna rat
That's
me out.
probably,
And
yep.
that's what I thought. And then he stayed here, because part of his charge is because the alien is clearly fully functional, as we'll see when it finally reveals at the end. He stayed
Mm-hmm.
because that was his job, was to stay and monitor. He was the Men in Black to the Mr.
Yeah.
Grays for when they finally came back, and he wanted, you figure somewhere along the way they had a tangle, and he wanted another shot at him. Again, I am helping this movie out a lot by
You are,
getting you
but I
there.
get your point, though. I
Yeah.
get your point. It's not there on the screen, that's for
No,
sure.
and it's not on the page entirely either. That's why I say, like, I agree with your statement. There is something here that
Yeah.
could work if it, and I can't believe it, but I'm going to say this, but in the hands of people that didn't feel so slavish to the source,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, there's differences in the book and the movie, but not a whole lot.
Not a whole
It's
lot,
it's
no.
pretty close, which makes me wonder if King didn't have a lot of say in this.
It's possible. I don't know. And it's interesting because even you would think, like you said, you keep thinking even the people that are involved could save it, and they can't, because I don't even think even the people in this movie are giving the best performances I've ever seen them give.
Eh,
Like Tom
Yeah,
Jane is okay. I don't think Tom Jane is the greatest actor in the world anyway. I like him,
he's
but I don't think he's fantastic.
he's
But
a vanilla action white guy
yeah.
without being a
Um,
superhero.
Timothy Olyphant is really good.
He's just being weird, which is
He's
what he
being
does.
weird, but he's good.
Jason Lee's
Uh,
being basically a Kevin Smith character with less dialogue.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jason Lee, I guess, is fine.
Lewis is the
Yeah,
only one
it's
I feel like gives the performance that it, like, I wouldn't change
yep.
much about anything he does.
No, he's
Um,
good.
mhm.
And I mean, I guess Morgan Freeman. It's hard to crap on Morgan Freeman. He's always at least doing something, but it's like, man, you are wasted in this
Well,
movie.
you ever seen that movie Wanted? Which itself is a wild
No,
adaptation of a piece of source material. You can listen to the review of it in the archives for
I'll have
sure.
to. Yeah,
But I mean, that's a movie where, like, why is Morgan Freeman in this weird comic book movie about assassins?
yeah.
Like, oh, sometimes you just do it for the thing. Or when he's in
Hmm.
those Now You See Me movies, I like
Mm,
those
hmm.
movies, But I wonder, like, do you need Morgan Freeman for that? Probably not. But he gives it a lot. Like he's
Yeah.
trying something with it. I think he looked at this character, and that's the thing is I don't remember enough about it to speak 100% on this, but I don't remember having what he's doing as a performance in my head when I read
Hmm.
that book.
Yeah.
Curtis is off his rocker. He's a madman, and he spent the back part of his career doing alien chasing, going back to
Hmm.
Roswell and stuff. So he's there for exposition dumping. And Sizemore is supposed to be that good lieutenant who finally realizes, nah, the old man's gone too far, and I got to
I
stop
don't,
him.
here's
But it
the
doesn't come
weird
off that
thing.
way.
No, but also here's the weird thing. I don't think that character's wrong. Like, if your
Mhm.
options are quarantine all these people and kill them regardless of, I,
Mhm.
or lose the human race entirely to this invading aliens,
Mhm.
I don't think like it sucks, and I think they even both of him and Sizemore's character both say like it all goes away except the dreams. Like I don't think he feels good about what he's going to do. I think
Mm-mm.
he admits that he doesn't like. I mean, he has a line of dialogue like those are Americans. I don't like that I have to. I don't think he's the wrong one here.
No, that's what
I
I say
don't
is
like.
is the military part of this story doesn't need actual characters to
No.
accomplish the goals that they're asked to do.
Yeah.
You can have an aside where and
Yeah.
it's actually plays better in the book. Thomas Jane uses his telepathy to cause a riot and
Yep.
get to Underhill and get him to help him out and the other characters too that we said the guy that got to shoot in the script.
Right.
Like I think you could just have random military people going like, look, we've seen this before. We know what we got to do. This is not how we like it, but it's going to be what it
Hmm.
is. And they can just be generic, whoever's. And
Hmm.
then when Thomas Jane runs along, I mean, he's the one that goes like, no, I've got something better. I've got a friend that's got an insight to this. And that's a neat, way of twisting this without
Yeah.
having to make them, because again, they're in the movie so much, the military is that it takes away from these other guys being able to actually
It
actualize into
it
anything.
takes away from the other guys and it tries to give the film extra antagonists that it doesn't require.
Yeah.
Like I watching it, I just again, I couldn't get away from the idea that like Underhill's not actually in the wrong. He's not doing something good
Hmm.
necessarily, but he is doing something necessary because how many people do they have quarantined in that little place? 100 people,
Yeah, a
maybe?
ton,
And
a
you got to
ton.
kill like 100 people to save billions of
Yeah.
people? Like it's and again, I'm a pacifist. My answer
Mhm.
is usually like, can we please find a way to do anything without hurting anybody?
Hmm.
But at the same time, what are they going to do? Wait and see if these people recover or risk having the aliens multiply exponentially and then not be able to capture, and
Uh,
contain the problem?
there's that part of it. The other problem is the way this movie looks.
Oh,
Kasdan's
man.
directing this like it's some sort of dramatic tragedy, but the source material is a B movie monster movie
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Yep.
So that disconnect is sort of low key hilarious, but the whole thing seems so washed out. Like it's supposed to look like they're in this isolated, desolate place in Maine. It's a
Hmm.
familiar setting with King, right, in the winter, but it just looks like an expensive freezer. The set. Like
Uh-huh.
it to me, man, it just looks cheap. And I'm like, this is not a cheap movie. $68 million in
No, it looks
2003 is a lot of
expensive.
money,
It,
you know?
I think it looks expensively cheap,
Hmm.
and I don't even think it's shot particularly well,
No,
honestly. Like
it's
I
washed
was,
out. It's like it's shooting through a dirty
yeah,
gold window the whole time. It's
yeah,
uh
and
like
so I don't know.
to borrow from our friends at Why Wasn't It Better? Like today, this would be a $130 million movie, which is a low grade Marvel movie.
Hmm.
Like that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
And
well, a lot of stuff isn't shot super well these days either.
no, it's
So
no, it's not. But like the effects in this don't look great, for
no,
what they're getting.
although, can I call out
Mhm.
one thing that I was sitting there with my jaw on the floor, like, why does this look as good as it does? And I'll explain. When all the wildlife is fleeing
That looks
past the
awesome.
cabin,
That's the best
I
shot in the
was
movie.
like,
Yeah.
all of these animals look great.
Mhm.
And I just went and saw a few weeks back Disclosure Day, and all the animals in that movie look fucking terrible.
Mhm.
And a lot of wildlife in movies I have seen in the past 4 or 5 years look fucking terrible. And it's like, why does this
And
wildlife all look better than any wildlife I've seen in a movie in 5 years? Beyond,
mhm.
um, the only explanation I could come up with is but then the rest of the effects in the movie are in this movie, the rest of the digital effects are actually really bad.
Yeah,
So I
can
don't
we
know.
talk about the weasels? Like they're
Yeah.
like layers of evil to them. Like they're
Hmm.
not only did how they're birthed, they have like pincer tails, but they've also got this face of teeth, which I feel like was ripped off in Prometheus, by the way, if you remember that scene. Like there's
Yeah.
that whole thing, and it's all, they're
And
just,
they can kind of shape shift. Like sometimes they can
yeah,
look like the little gentle aliens, and then other times they look like the big monster at the
but
end.
they always look like a slimy gummy worm,
Yep.
crawling around. And that
Yeah.
it's hard to take that seriously. I remember distinctly sitting in the theater and everyone laughing when that happened, like when
Mhm.
it came out, and you're like, I'm fairly certain we're not supposed to laugh at this. We're supposed to be terrified, but it's so bad. And I
Yeah.
think part of it is too, King's right. A lot of bad things are discovered in the bathroom. There's a lot of humor attached to the bathroom too, and
As well. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hard, it's hard to cross that line when it's supernatural in particular. When it's a person
Hmm.
coming through a bathroom with an axe, that's different,
Yeah.
or a knife or something like that. Or there's a fire or whatever. But like when it's a shit weasel,
Yeah, when
literally,
these guys are just crapping out aliens, it's
it's
like, yes,
yeah.
that scene where the dude falls over and his butt is like gaping
Hmm.
blood, like
Yeah.
it's gross, but at the same time, you're like,
I mean, it is. It brings back that, and I have to
yeah,
remember. I'm like, okay, where was King when he's writing this? He's laying flat on his back, having
hmm,
had lower body injuries. Going to the bathroom is an ordeal,
yeah,
for you. And there's no, dignity in it anymore at
no,
all.
yeah,
And so he's processing that through this writing, but he's
hmm,
also got teenage boys who are just grown up teenagers as grown ups now.
hmm.
And when they're together, what are they doing? Screwing around, making up stuff, joking
Yeah,
at each
and
other.
King is famous for he uses a lot of the fart dick and fart
Hmm.
jokes in his
Yes.
books.
Yes, he does.
He's very fond of, and I'm not gonna lie, I I laughed at the two guys like, oh God, I need. Do you have any spare gas masks? Give
Yeah,
me
I
some air.
mean,
It's
there's
like,
comedy going on between Thomas Jane and Jason Lee there that
yeah,
is supposed to break the tension, but it's
yeah,
also overwhelming the scene too. Because I'm like,
yep,
wait a minute, we are not, as an audience, understanding that this is a freaking alien happening in
no,
front of me. I'm
no,
laughing at two guys who were very funny, have fun. And that can be fun. And that's why I say, like, the problem with this movie and its tonal shifts all the time is that it needs it to be these just everyday guys
hmm,
that have this extraordinary gift that they don't know how to use, run afoul of an alien invasion. That's the
yeah.
simplest version of the story, but they don't know how to connect all that together because again, they've got all this disparate comedy going on,
Hmm.
and then just ultra violence. When Jason Lee's hand gets bitten off basically, and then he gets
Hmm.
taken out by this thing because he can't keep toothpicks off. That was such a weird character thing. But
Yeah, it was like, dude, you are risking your life to pick a toothpick off a
I
dirty
I
floor.
may be
Like,
misremembering this, but I feel like the story was this guy had quit smoking, and this was like his way of getting through that, was keeping
oh
something
yeah,
going. But
that might be.
but that's not in this movie at
No.
all. Again, I may be misremembering that. But I can't even get a drop line with as much dialogue as in this dang movie. I can't get any reason like, man, I can't believe you're still doing this toothpick beaver. Yeah, it's better than Marlboro's. Like that's all you got to have, and
Yeah.
just sitting around that table when they're shooting the shit, and
Yep.
it would have been fun. But they're not gonna do it. And again, like the violence of this scene is so undercut by the wild comedy of it and the fact that it looks
Hmm.
like crap. The only cool thing is when the alien reveals itself, and it doesn't look great, but it is a shocking moment to see this very tall, slender gray man standing in
Yes.
front of Damian Lewis.
With no
And
mouth.
yeah,
Yeah.
and when it turns into that red, cyclone of dust, that's a good piece of direction to, in shorthand, tell
Hmm.
us what is happening to him.
Yeah.
And then when you get to see it, the other piece of this that looks great and is a great representation of a neat idea of the memory warehouse. That's
Yes.
actually really
Hmm.
cool. That this guy
Yeah.
can compartmentalize his mind in such a way that in his brain it is a spiral library of
Hmm.
memories, but he's got a special room he can lock stuff in that nobody can touch.
Yep.
And I thought, man, that's a neat thing. I'm like, did King go through some therapy and somebody help him unlock this visual idea somewhere? I don't know where that
Maybe,
came
I don't
from.
know, because it's not a totally original idea. There's the
No,
idea of the Mind Palace
of
where you
course.
keep,
Yeah.
and that but it is the way that they visualize that in the
Mhm.
movie is really good.
Yeah.
And um so
I mean,
and the only part that I also thought was anywhere near decent, like you said, was just them hanging out, like cooking and joking around as friends.
mhm.
But I spent the rest of the movie going, man, this is I was like it's been a while since have read the book, so I spent the movie going, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about. Oh, Thomas Jane is talking into a gun like it's a telephone while he's telepathically commuting with his buddy. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't entirely come together. That's the thing,
No.
and let's talk about that when he goes and gets Duddits from, his ailing mother or whatever, and he's obviously
Hmm.
dying. The body is dying, maybe not the alien,
Yeah.
but the body is dying. And he's hanging on, and these guys have talked about like, yeah, I need to go see him. It's been a while or whatever. And
Hmm.
at that point in my life, I think this movie came out before that happened, but I had a friend that maybe a year or two later that had gotten really sick, friend from college I hadn't seen in years, and I didn't get a chance
Hmm.
to see him before he passed. I did get to talk to him, and I just remember thinking like, oh man, it's that thing as an adult that, oh, I need to go see that friend of mine. I need to go talk,
Yep.
and you don't do it, and then one day it's too late. There's a story in that, that
Hmm.
again, but it's just all told in such slapdash here, that,
Yeah, it's
you
all
know,
bang, 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 bang. Like
yeah,
the like you said, I mean,
it's a two
I'll
hour and
admit
15
I
minute
haven't.
movie, and it's in a damn hurry the whole time. And that's the problem.
Yeah, and when they started talking about like you've been thinking about Duddits, we should go see Duddits. Um, Man, I haven't seen my own brother in 5 years. Now, granted, he
Mhm.
lives across the country from me,
Hmm.
but it's like, man, I haven't seen my brother in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, that's a
Time goes
crazy thing to
by.
think about.
Yeah.
And there's just things that you think about like that, and it's like time goes by, and yeah, he lives across the country, and yeah, I've been through a lot personally that
Mhm.
affected me mentally and financially within the past few years, and he's moved around to the other side of the country, so he hasn't had money and time to come back this way either. But it's
Mhm.
it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, there's a story there in the idea of like missing the people you
Well,
love and needing to make sure you make time for them,
and that's the
and it
thing though,
just goes by. It
is
just
these guys all have that kind of melancholy about not seeing this guy, but they still will all make time to get together, you know.
yes.
And I think somewhere in that mix is a little bit of guilt of like, why don't we bring him? Well, does any of us really know how to take care of him? Like that. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure that's what they say, it'd be a conversation I would
Hmm.
have, and that's fair, to say, but
It
it's also
is.
like, but we could just skip the cabin when you're guys and just go,
Yeah, we
it,
come. How many
yeah.
times they said, "Oh, we've been here for 20 years and we've never brought him." Well, why don't
Yeah,
you just go hang out with your buddy in Derry? Like you
exactly.
guys can
Yeah.
stay at the hotel and you can take your buddy out for lunch. Like you guys
Yeah.
know how to take him out for lunch. You guys know how to go to the park. You guys
Exactly.
like you can
His
the
mother would
same
probably
thing.
love it too,
Yeah,
and
you know how to do this. You know how to do all this
well,
stuff. You don't have
and
to go to this dirty cabin in the middle of
well,
nowhere.
and here's the reason why I think, and what they don't say is that these guys are all holding on to the last bits of their innocence of their youth. And the only
Mm,
way they can recapture that is when they are together, because as we've talked about, alone from each other, they're all fine in life.
hmm.
They're getting by. Some of them are pretty
Yeah.
successful, but they're not complete psychologically. They can't like
Yeah.
function, and they know it and they know something's missing. So they keep trying to find it with each other. When the truth was it was him. That
Yeah.
was what really pulled them together, and they just didn't go back to him, until
Yep.
they, but when they go to him though, that was a long way to get to this. That is really when I mean, this movie's, just been a slap in the face the whole way anyway. But when they go to him and Donnie Wahlberg's putting on that whole affected thing, and
Oof, yeah.
it's just hard to watch, man. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's bad,
Yeah.
and his performance is insulting.
I mean,
It's
it's insulting, and the fact that this character is just a superhero waiting to fight in a CGI fest is just the definition of a missed opportunity.
Yep.
Like, why at
Yep.
some point can if the Mr. Gray alien can have conversations with Jonesy, which I
Mhm.
know he's not actually talking out loud, that's all in his head. They're just representing.
Right, right. But yeah.
But if that can occur, why can't the dud it's alien, come out and go, fellas, I don't have time to explain all of it, but you got to get me to the reservoir, or
Yeah,
something.
why can't
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. And by the time adult Duddits comes into the story, half his friends are dead.
Exactly. Yeah, Beaver's dead. Pete's about to be dead, because
Yeah.
he's been attacked and he's now on the back of Jonesy's snowmobile and giving him directions as only he can. And then he tells him to eat it or whatever. And then of course the alien does,
Yep.
because he's had enough. And because he else doesn't eat him anymore. That's the other thing. So I put that in the plot summary in particular because it was a question that came up as we were watching. Like, why did he kill him? I was like, because he's not useful anymore. Like, he knows where the
Exactly.
highway is now. He doesn't need him. And which also brought up to another like plot problem, just I'm going to fuss about for a minute. Why would an interstellar being able to travel light years need directions to the friggin' highway?
Um, Obviously the interstellar GPS went up with the craft when they crashed, and then the
Yeah,
military blew up the site.
fair point. Okay, I will accept that. But
Mm.
it again, you gotta give this movie a lot of help to get there.
Yeah, I know.
The other thing too is that, and it really took me this
I mean,
watching to get it, was that he had the dog eat the alien carcass so it would get infected, so then he could dump it in the water supply. And I'm
mhm.
like, at no time does any of that said. You have to figure that out.
Yeah,
And I realize
and
movies are you need to show, not just tell, but every now and then, especially when it comes to alien things, you might need to tell people like,
I
what are we
guess
doing?
I guess
Right?
my other thing is, why can't he just directly infect the water? Why does it have to
Yeah.
germinate inside of the dog? I guess it just does.
Yeah.
I have the
Mhm.
same problem every time I watch Alien.
Mhm.
I love Alien, I love aliens, but my thing is always like, the face hugger seems a little bit like a wasted step. Like it's in the life cycle, it's kind of a wasted step. It's
It
like,
it
why
it
can't the
yeah.
adult alien just directly
See,
impregnate another, anyway, that's a
you
whole other
no,
conversation, you know.
you just hit what my problem is with all of the Alien movies outside of the first two, because the thing Ridley
Hmm.
Scott knew and the thing James Cameron knew was you don't need to explain too much about these things, because the more
Right,
you know, the less it'll work or whatever. The first one,
right.
the whole facehugger is built off the idea of like, what's the scariest thing? The two writers had this conversation. The scariest thing we can think of, it
Hmm.
would be a man getting raped in the face. And they're like, well, what if it
Yeah.
was an alien? Then it's even weirder and worse. This is
Yep.
this animal attacking you in your face in some way. So they dreamed
Yep.
up a scenario for that to happen. And all Cameron did was, what if they're like bees and there's a queen? And that's it. And that you didn't know anything else,
Yep.
And when they
No,
explored it
I
and all
get
the
it,
further,
but
it's
like,
terrible. And the same with this too. I actually like the idea that like it's not completely drawn out. They give us enough of the
mhm.
water. The only thing I can
Yeah.
think of with the dog is like it infected an animal that can reproduce multiple offspring at once versus one at a time, or two,
Yeah.
if you're,
And what it comes down to is, really, those questions don't matter. They're things that pop into
yeah,
my in this story, it doesn't matter. It would be bad either way, whether I
that,
knew or not. And in Aliens, it
mhm,
would be just fine either way.
yeah,
Whether it's the same thing when every time, um excuse me, when
mhm,
Superman or Supergirl flies through space.
Hmm.
It's like I understand they're superpowered, but at some point, don't they have to fucking breathe? Like they breathe. Like how long can and
Yep.
it goes back to you said why does a being that made interstellar travel? That is every alien story in the world.
Hmm.
How do they traverse including quote unquote real life alien story,
Hmm.
how do they traverse billions and billions of miles through all of the junk and hazards of space and somehow always crash here on Earth? How do they make it all this way? And
Hmm.
then just somehow they get here and just plummet to the planet.
Right.
Like it doesn't make a lot of sense. Just
And
go with it.
the problem is that this movie is not doing enough to keep my attention. So this is where my mind
Mm-hmm.
is going while I'm watching it, because even though there's 1,000 things happening at once, none of it
Yep.
seems to matter. It's all stupid
No,
or it's really badly done, and I
no,
don't care. Like I.
no, it's like you said, it's
Mhm.
slavish to the source material when they had an opportunity to make some of this stuff matter
Make something
and
cool.
like
Yeah.
make it cool. And that's the really
Yeah.
unfortunate part about this film at the end of the day
The
is
wild
it's
thing about it is the part of this that I'm gonna praise this movie for a little bit though. The one thing that I think works about it is the James Newton Howard score. Like the
yep,
score's actually kind of good.
yep.
Like it's
That's true.
it
That's true.
you
I
can't
thought it was
ground.
good right in those I thought the opening
Yeah,
credits were weird, but I liked the
yeah,
music.
yeah. I was like, you can't ground the absurdity of this in any way, but it's got this, I don't know, the sentimentality of the strings and the pianos and stuff. There's like a piece of melancholy, which I do think is at the core of the story of these guys. We've talked about that a little bit. I think
Hmm.
uh, James Howard got that. Like I think he understood that and delivered a
Yeah.
really neat score. It's just it's a shame it was shoved in a movie about aliens eating you from the inside out, more or less, but
Yeah.
not in a cool way at all. But the score is good. I'm glad you agree with me on that. I think the score looks great. It again is hampered by this horrendous um, production design and photography that just doesn't work.
No.
Again, it looks like it's shot through a dirty window most of the time.
Which again is
Mhm.
shocking. Kasdan directed
Mhm.
Empire Strikes Back, and
No, he
that
didn't
was a
direct it. He wrote it. He wrote it.
wrote
So
it.
yeah,
Excuse
yeah.
who directed that?
That's Irvin Kershner directed
Oh,
it.
that's right.
So,
It
but
was
he's
Irving
been
Kershner.
around
You're
a
right.
lot of really good
That's what I mean. He's been
sets.
around a lot of great directors,
Mhm.
and then went.
I mean, the guy that shot this shot like The English Patient. He won awards for that. He shot Cold
It's
Mountain and Rain Man, and
crazy.
he actually worked on Mad Max Fury Road. I mean, this is a guy that knows how to shoot things, and it is awful. It's just awful, and I feel bad, for okay, I'll give you a movie, a drama movie. This guy James Steele, John Steele shot The Firm, which is an incredibly
Mm-hmm.
good, like tight thriller.
Yep.
It can be done where there's a lot of characters, a lot of dialogue. It can be done, but not in this movie. It's just
No.
bad, and that's the problem is when we get into this ultimate climax at the water station. It just seems like the movie's like, we just got to wrap this up, man. So you've got Tom Sizemore with a pistol shooting at Morgan Freeman in a helicopter with a Gatling gun. That is not a fair fight
No.
under any circumstance. But Die Hard 3 style, damn it, it works.
It worked.
They shoot him down. They
Uh,
both
by
die.
by the
And
time they got to the end, it's like they didn't care anymore the way I didn't care anymore. So they're like,
no,
just finish it. Like there's
yeah,
no triumph. There's no sense of like satisfaction. It's Duddits goes in and goes, I'm Duddits, and turns into an alien and explodes with the other alien.
yeah.
And
They
it's
they
like,
stab each other in Mortal Kombat AVPR style and explode
ah,
while you know Henry shooting the little weasel, larvae or whatever with the machine gun, um,
yep.
only for again Jonesy to be released from the prison that he's been in, and the way he's back is he steps on the one. There's one that lives after
One
they
little
blow
one
it up,
left.
and it's just creeping its way to the water like this guy. I just need a drink of water. It's just trying to get in the sewer, and of course he steps on it and smiles, and that's like, oh, he's back, and that's supposed to be like uplifting.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, so many questions that will never be answered. I mean, these guys like have
No, and
what do
and
you go
again,
back to say to this woman in your hometown about, I'm sorry your son was an alien? Um, yeah,
yeah,
what
well,
do you do?
she goes, she lets him go and is
Hmm.
like, I think he's just gonna be happy to die with you guys. Like she knows he's leaving to
But
die.
you still got to go tell her he's dead. So you got to go
Yeah,
do
I
that.
know.
And
And
I know there's a thing in the book where like they're in like quarantine for,
but at the end of the
weeks.
day, like I said, the I just don't care. Like Jonesy
Yeah.
steps on that little larvae and smiles, and it's supposed to be like, ah, he's okay. And I'm like, I, who cares? I
Yeah.
don't care.
The problem is like for that ending too to happen, that it's supposed to be this big surprise reveal that done it's also an alien. He's just been hiding out in it. And I know why you think, oh, we gotta save that to the end because it's the big surprise. But it wasn't a surprise at all. Because when he steps in that doorway, you're like, well, one of two things is about to happen. This guy's going to sacrifice himself for his two friends, and that's going to be sad, or he's also an alien.
Mhm.
And the
But
second choice was
also,
obvious. So,
it's
mhm,
set up earlier in the film.
mhm.
During one of the teen scenes, one of them says something about, I think Duddits is an alien. I
Yeah.
don't think he's. So you're like, oh, well, that's a line of dialogue that is obviously giving away something because it just is like
Mhm.
there. It's just there. It's like, oh, that obviously is going to be
It,
the thing.
yeah, but again, like and these guys talk about like I mean Timothy Olyphant in one of his monologues talks about like I think our friend knows what's going on and we need to get to him. They all know
Hmm.
because, and the reason they know is because he's shared it with them. They just don't, as humans, don't know how to unlock that part of the brain, But
Hmm.
he did that as a way to kind of couch like, hey, I got to have some allies here,
Yeah.
so this
But
is an
you're
easy way to do
again,
it.
you're
But you're having
you're
to help
doing
it.
all the lifting for the
Yes.
movie. It's
And that is the
not doing the
problem.
lifting on its own.
It would be like watching Jurassic Park with none of the scenes set up at all to explain to you how they got dinosaurs on the island. It's just you show up to the island and
Yep.
dinosaurs.
The best way to put this, Jay, is uh people without proper media literacy won't understand like you and I
Mhm.
barely understand this movie, and you and I at least have some proper media literacy.
Hmm.
People with no, all the things we've talked about, like inferring things,
Yeah.
people watching this movie, no wonder it didn't. People, I can imagine people walking out of the theater going, "What happened in
I
this
mean,
movie? Like,
if the
what
internet
was?"
that exists today existed then, the number of YouTube videos about the bombing of this movie after the first weekend and how far it dropped
Mm-hmm.
would have been infinite. It would have been as many as the larvae that are in this movie at some
Mm-hmm.
point because it it was a complete disaster. And the thing is, like with what is there, there's no way to fix it. Like with what is
No.
there without completely redoing it. Like I was thinking about myself, like, well, if you just cut the military part out, would it work? I'm like, no, it would still suck. I'm like, because it's still
Yeah.
stupid. Like it still requires the audience to do too much work to
Yep.
get you there. And yeah.
You know what it is? And I'll tell you the way. And I don't think this is always the answer for every novel adaptation, but it is an
Mhm.
answer for novel adaptations that are the size of a small brick, which
Mhm.
Dreamcat. The answer to properly telling this story and making it interesting is a 10 episode miniseries where you
Yeah.
can really explore who these people are,
Hmm.
get invested in their friendship and their relationships. Because off the top of my head, I can't remember. I believe Dreamcatcher is closing in on 1,000 pages or
Right
more.
around. Yeah.
Um, Dreamcatcher novel. I want to just see the page count on it real quick while I'm
Hmm.
thinking about it. Just because, oh no, it's actually shorter than I thought. Holy shit, it's only 620 pages.
Oh, wow.
I uh I was remember I
Hmm.
have it's in the other room. Otherwise I
Hmm.
would have been able to tell you because I have it because I'm a
Hmm.
completist, but
But still,
it's
that's
only
a
six.
lot. of.
It's a lot. It's still a big no
Mhm,
I for some reason I
mhm.
thought it was around 900 pages. I thought it was about 300 pages longer than it is,
It
but
feels it though.
it feels
I'll
300 pages longer.
yeah. Having the one time I read it, it felt like that's why I agree with you. I was like, yeah, I think this was pretty close to 700 or 800 pages. It felt every second of it.
Yeah,
Is
it
the
did.
problem?
So,
There's
but
nothing
I do
satisfying
think
to it. Is the problem? You know.
no, and I think if you had somebody that wanted to tell this story and went
Mhm.
ahead and said, "Let's really invest in these guys. Let's it let's even have them as adults talk about what they because they don't even they get together and they like joke around and have a good time. But like and maybe this is the 2026 in me. These dudes don't talk to each other at all about how much their lives suck. And they don't
No.
actually seek real solace in each other. They do the old unhealthy man thing and
Hmm.
just go around it. They don't say, like I, I don't know about you, but if one of my buddies put a gun to his head a few days ago, I would want him to tell me that he put a gun to his head. I would want to be
Right.
like, dude, we need to get you some, like, we need to talk about that. That's serious. We need to get you some help. Or if,
I'll
my
tell you.
buddy,
I'll tell
it's
you.
like, it's,
I think I think
you
could
know,
do this. You're onto something. Like, do this as one of those Apple TV. You know, they want to just redo stuff from the 90s and 2000s right now. Anyway,
yes.
do it
Yeah,
as one
that's
of
true.
those 8 to 10 episode deals.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and and really say, you probably could even keep the military plot because they would actually be characters instead of just caricatures, at this
Hmm.
point. But you need to center this around four friends trapped in a cabin with a space parasite as kind of the central piece of it. You need to
Yeah.
keep it before you blow it up into this big thing. And I realize it's a 2 hour movie, so that you got to move
Hmm.
faster. But I'm with you. This feels like this should have been a mini series. This should have been a show. And maybe
Yeah.
they didn't do it because at the time miniseries had to be so washed down for
Oh, yeah.
broadcast
Oh,
television.
for sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now, again, with something like Netflix, Apple, and Amazon, you can do, I mean, we've seen the things that they do on these shows.
Hmm.
You can do a lot with it. So why not make the most of it?
And
And really,
you
yeah.
can blow the story up more
Hmm.
gradually to the world ending part
Yeah.
where that part will end up seem pardon me will end up seeming less what the hell and ridiculous
Exactly.
like and immediate
Hmm.
because at the end of the day the story is still going to be the story and the story is still a little ridiculous.
Hmm.
But I think it goes down better if you can connect with the characters and you spend more time, like you said, the alien parasite in the middle of nowhere, not even just the cabin, but just in the middle of nowhere
Hmm.
kind of thing. You're out in the woods with the horror of the
Hmm.
thing, and I just hit on the thing,
Yeah, exactly.
So
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it could work, but as alas, it doesn't. So we're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts and popcorn ratings. So Matt, what are yours for Dreamcatcher?
Whew, that was a small popcorn if I ever saw one. I've definitely seen worse movies. I'll say that.
Mhm.
There are many, many worse movies I have seen in my lifetime, a few of which I have literally watched the week prior to us recording this. That being said, there's just nothing to latch onto here.
Mhm.
It's not entertaining. It's mildly offensive to anybody that has ever cared about anybody with a developmental disability. It's um ridiculous. It's not scary in the parts it needs to be scary. It's just an all-around kind of failure of a film, even if it's not necessarily like the worst thing ever made.
Well, I'm with you. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it is a small popcorn. And if this movie was a meal, it would be a meal consisting entirely of desserts and desserts that I like. But when you put them together, I might be full, but I'm going to regret it in about 20 minutes. And then that is this movie. It just there's so many morsels of the things that make a Stephen King movie work or a Stephen King
Hmm.
story work. There's so many things that make an alien invasion work and all that stuff,
Yep.
but none of it congeals. And the fact that it fails so spectacularly is the story of it because of the people involved with it. If this had been
Hmm.
some, $10 million cheapie and you never heard any of
Yeah.
these people again, well, at least it would have a catch factor of being funny. It's the fact
Hmm.
that it is this big budget, prestige Hollywood
Yeah,
thing
you're right. Yeah.
that fails so spectacular that makes it even worthwhile to talk about because this has been forgotten. I mean, that's why it's ripe for a readaptation. Is nobody remembers this, and anybody who
No.
does just remembers it being bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, it deserves another shot with people that again can tell it no, can tell the story no. Like, yeah, we're not going to tell that, and yeah, we're not going to do it
Hmm.
that way. Like if they could make that happen, there might be something there. But as it stands. Goodness, no, it's not the worst King adaptation ever, but it's incredibly unsatisfying. So yeah,
Yeah.
small popcorn all the way. Yeah. Well, Matt, thanks again for coming on the show.
Of
This this
course, man.
this this show has been anything but a small popcorn. Do tell people how they can follow you and all the cool stuff you got going on.
Yeah, man. Anybody that wants to listen to me be generally geeky about different pop culture things, that is the Two Broke Geeks podcast. I have another fairly niche podcast that's mostly for anybody interested in Christmas performing, that is being professional Santa, Mrs. Claus, or Elf. That is called North Pole Radio. And if you want to go ahead also and buy my fairly niche book, it is Santa in His Own Words by Santa Claus with help from Matt Spalding. That is a Christmas book I wrote. If you can't tell, I love Christmas and I perform as Santa Claus at Christmas time. And so I wrote a novel and had a good time doing that. And I always feel weird plugging my book because people are like, he's plugging his book. He's just trying to make some money. I promise you, I self-published this book. I make about $2 off of it by the time it's all said and done. I just, want people to read it and have a good time. So,
And indeed they should. And, again, appreciate you coming on and being a part of this conversation. And you folks, Matt's tagged in the description. Follow him on the social medias. You can find all of his good stuff out there as well. And of course, you can follow this show on social media everywhere you find those things. Filmstrip Pod is the handle to go with. We're primarily on X and Instagram and Facebook. And Letterboxd, which we desperately need to update. Maybe I will by the time this comes out. But we have those things, and then obviously you find the show wherever you find podcasts. Occasionally you get the video version on YouTube, but all of our audio is there as well, along with Apple, Spotify, Amazon, any of the places you get your podcasts. You can find this show. We appreciate the support. So until next time, thank you for listening to Filmstrip.
Thank you for listening to Filmstrip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.